Coming up on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, Edgar and I have a lot to discuss on this special edition. Governor Gavin Newsom releasing his May budget revision. We're talking Prop 98. We're talking super colas and so much more that ahead.
The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now.
It is a Thursday at 3 o'clock. Welcome into the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break alongside the Dr. Edgar Zazueta. My name is Michael Kelly. So good to have you with us. I will tell you right off the bat, it takes a lot for Naj Ali Khan to miss a budget day here at ACSA. Might be the first one he's missed in over a decade, but I promise you, hopefully you are in good hands with Edgar and myself. Edgar, how are you?
Mike, always good when you sub in here. I know it makes your job a little bit more difficult than you and Gianna handle it on the back end. You get to do double duty here. Yeah, I was thinking about that as we came on. I know how much I always say this. Naj disproportionately enjoys budget day. I think he enjoys budget day than any of us who have worked on this over the years. I know he called it one of his holidays, one of his favorite days at ACSA, but for good reason he's not with us today. I know celebrating the graduation of one of his daughters. So we wish him the best there, and rightly so. These are important days. I love that it's graduation season. You know, I know we have a couple of staff members who are celebrating their kids' college graduation. I know high school graduation season is upon us, so definitely a season of celebration. So good reason that Naj is not with us.
Good reason. You'll also notice that Edgar not in ACSA offices right now, and there's a good reason for that as well. ACSA missing some AC right now. I'm leaving it out, Edgar.
No, you're gonna call me out. I actually was there earlier. So yes, our AC is not working properly. We are allowing our staff. We're getting up here in 90-degree weather in Sacramento. I was actually there just not too long ago, trying to manage some scheduling conflicts here. So I promise I didn't leave you just because I think all of you are going to be there in the sauna there in the office. So we'll see. We'll see how pretty you guys look here, you know, without any sweat dripping down your face by the end of the show.
I'm just saying, I've got studio lights on me right now. I think makeup is going to be dripping off my face by the end of this show, but hopefully we will try to avoid that. A lot to discuss, and let's get you straight into Governor Gavin Newsom's May budget revision. Proposes a $349.9 billion balanced budget, and there's so much to discuss. $246.6 billion from the general fund, nearly $30 billion in reserves for TK through 12 education. Prop 98 funding would total $127.1 billion, bringing per pupil spending to a record $28,282. The proposal also includes a 4.31% super cola. You heard me right, super cola. That includes the statutory 2.87% cola. Also, 14 weeks of paid pregnancy leave included in this May budget revision proposal, and $2.4 billion in new special education funding. So there's that. But obviously a lot being made about the fact that Governor Gavin Newsom continuing to withhold $3.9 billion from the Prop 98 guarantee. That is down from the $5.6 billion in January. As you would imagine, he was asked about that, and here was what he had to say.
We made some accommodation to that concern, and I would just have them look at the entire balance sheet and be hard-pressed to find an administration over a 7-year period that's invested more in transforming our TK, brand new grade, to 12 education system. And that would be my response to that question.
Edgar, is that response sufficient for you?
Well, first of all, if you've already answered that question, because I think that put me on the spot right off the bat, Michael, but no, I'll get to that. But I want to say, just to echo, I saw some comments of your excitement and just the energy that you bring. Frankly, I think Gavin Newsom should borrow you here, because I've never heard the super cola sound as exciting as you made it sound. So we'll unpack that, you know, and I think our team will see what
a sports anchor. Like
I love it. I love it.
Reads come into play here for a little bit, right?
No, I think they should use some of that enthusiasm. So to your question, so what does this look like? And I think this is what's the bottom line? So first, I think it is worth acknowledging, that there's a lot of improvements here in terms of the budget. Special ed investments higher than what we saw in January. The block grant, more money, significantly more money than we were anticipating in January. Investments in community schools. So a lot of good things. And our team is going to break all that down. The flip side, and I think this was the kind of the origins of the question the governor got, is this withholding that, yes, it improved, but it's still there. And I think that, again, as I say every year, it's our job to kind of find those areas that still need some improvement. We've seen the legislature clearly say that they were not in favor of the Proposition 98 withholding. So yeah, while there's improvement to the governor's question, I think there's still a responsibility to pay schools the money that they're owed, the money that we should anticipate under Prop 98. So good stuff in the budget, but not good enough on that part of it is what I would say.
And as we've alluded to, the fact that 1.6 billion is going straight into the rainy day fund, make of that what you will as well. We have two of the best in the business when it comes to breaking down this type of stuff, and we're thrilled that they are here on this Thursday afternoon to join us. Yvonne Carrillo, Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations, and Cordell Hampton, Legislative Advocate for ACSA. And we get to bring them in and welcome them into the show now. Gentlemen, how are we? This is exciting.
It's nice and warm. I'm excited
Are we
for
sweating
it.
yet? We're not sweating yet.
I'm glad I just remember to put on deodorant.
That comes later. No one go near Cordell today. Yvonne, let's start with you. Before we get into the specifics, let's set the stage. What's the broader financial and political backdrop shaping Gavin Newsom's final May revision?
Well, there's never a bigger factor in play than revenues. What are the figures? What's coming in? And the economy has been doing very, very well. So $16.5 billion in revenue growth since January. So that's certainly the main contributor to anything that we're celebrating here, and in comparison to January. But there also is caution. And so the governor continued to talk about this, just the out years, what they represent, the volatility that exists here in the state as it relates to revenue. So there is caution and wanting to make sure that ongoing obligations remain at a minimal. So just generally speaking, this budget has very little additional ongoing spending in comparison to what we saw in January, even though there is significant revenue growth. In terms of the political backdrop, I mean, it's an election year, so that always comes into play and has influence on outcomes. Folks don't like making cuts during an election year. All the members of the legislature, the assembly will be on the ballot, half the Senate. But we also have a governor who clearly has presidential aspirations. So certainly that's in play as it relates to the May revision as well.
Cordell, thanks for helping us on the big day here today. I know you're busy analyzing, going to meetings, but I know our members appreciate you taking the time to kind of unpack some of this. We already alluded to it. I think it's safe to say that one of the biggest issues we were looking at coming into the May revise is what would the governor do with this $5.6 billion withholding, right? And sometimes it gets convoluted with the formulas, and we talk Prop 98, but we've been talking about it all year, right? Money that was supposed to go to schools that the state decided to withhold. They say they're going to pay it back, right? But nonetheless, that was, I think, our top priority in terms of what we wanted to push for, not just us as ACSA, but also all of our other statewide partners. So we talked about it a little bit. There's changes. Kind of unpack that for us. Where did things land? How is the governor looking to restructure this? Where are we at with this proposal?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, you guys kind of hinted on already, the governor had proposed $5.6 billion in January, and he's taken 1.6 of that and put into a Prop 98 reserve and has lowered it down to $3.9 billion. I mean, for us, when we look at that from 5.6, we knew that came over just a little over $900 per ADA. But we look at 3.9, that's really coming over just over $600 per ADA for you guys. So, I mean, you know, we've talked about this before about the impact that we see about withholding those dollars, right? When it was over $900 per ADA for the students, right? That came over to millions for a lot of our members. And same thing, even when we're talking about $600 per ADA, that's still millions for a lot of our members still. And so when we're talking about fully making sure we're doing the best for our students, providing a first-class education system for our students, really need to make sure that we're fully funding Proposition 98. I think you and I, Edgar, have kind of talked about in the past There's a key point for our legislative advocacy days. We talked to members there. We were in West Sacramento a couple of weeks ago doing a public campaign opposed to the 5.6, and we're going to continue to oppose and work harder to make sure that Proposition 98 is fully funded.
If you have questions for Yvonne, for Cordell, for Edgar, be sure to put those questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. You've got us for the next 20 minutes or so. Let's talk about that super cola that Edgar says I love so much.
You made it sound exciting. So let's see if it lives up to the hype here. That's what I'm waiting to see.
Yvonne, help me make this live up to the hype. Help me break down what this means. Obviously, a 2.87% statutory cola, higher than what Dr. Patty Herrera projected than when we had her on the show a couple weeks ago. But the super cola is something new. Help us understand it.
Yeah, so it's that delta between the 4.31% and the 2.87 that's statutorily required. That equates to about $1.5 billion. So it's real money. It's going to go out to the field. Again, if this is adopted, this is ultimately a proposal here. But so I think there's reason to celebrate that, right? And but it should be noted that there is a new ongoing spending proposal that's built into the governor's May revision proposal, and that's to provide up to 14 weeks of paid disability disability leave that's related to pregnancy for all school staff, TK through community college. So it's estimated that this will be about $200 million in cost on schools. And the governor points to this ongoing COLA, this super COLA amount, as the pot that is to help pay for that additional cost related to the disability leave. So it's just important to note what it is and what it includes. And then if this were to get adopted, to ensure that it's talked about locally as it relates to negotiations, again, for what it's intended to support. Because certainly there's always bargaining pressures and local pressures that come up anytime that COLA that revolves around the COLA amount. So yeah, reason to celebrate it, but it's important to note that it includes the paid disability leave. There's a linkage there.
Hey, Vaughn, our friends in the governor's office, and maybe some in the legislature, might accuse us that from time to time being Debbie Downers, right? That we're always looking at the things that we don't like. So maybe I'll ask you, what are some of the positive aspects that you see coming out of this May revise? But with that said, and like I always joke, I mean, obviously, this is a step in the process. This is not the end of the game. What are those things that we're going to continue looking to refine in terms of the things we don't love?
No, I think the positive is the super COLA amount. There's also significant increase in investments in special education. We've been talking about this every single year. We hear the anecdotes from the district in terms of just investments in special ed haven't kept pace with cost. But there's about $2.5 billion more in special ed dollars in comparison to last year's spending levels. There's also significant increase in the one-time discretionary block grant. So that's proposed to be $5 billion and maintained in terms of going out on a per ADA amount, as well as providing full discretion to locals in terms of how those dollars are spent. Those are probably the three that I think are the greatest positives. In terms of areas, one other area I'll note is the reserves. It was also noted that there is building up of reserves. So I think anytime we have an opportunity to put money in the Prop 98 reserve and soften blows that possibly may happen in the future, I think that's prudent budgeting as well.
Cordell, let's go to you. Over the past few months, we've heard from the legislator. We've spent time at the Capitol at the ACSA Legislative Action Days meeting with assembly members and state senators about school funding and Prop 98. So this is one step with what we saw today from Governor Gavin Newsom. What do you think the legislature does as budget negotiations continue?
Yeah, well, I think was something that's really interesting this year that we haven't seen in previous years is prior to the governor releasing his May revise, the Senate and the Assembly have released their own budget frameworks, right? And in both those frameworks, we saw them oppose the withholding of the $5.6. And even though it's lower, I'm assuming that both the Senate and the Assembly are going to continue to oppose withholding. So I think this is going to be one of those very interesting dynamics where you have a governor who's trying his second time with a withholding proposal, but you're also having a legislature who's going to say, who's this time is saying, no, we need to fully fund Proposition 98. Us, along with other colleagues and ed management, talk about the costs that we're constantly seeing every year. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion between both the Assembly and the Senate and the governor's office. Another point where I think there can be some alignment is related to special education. So that we talk a lot, creating the governor's proposing, as Yvonne has just mentioned, about $1.8 billion for under the AB 602 funding structure, which will come out to a little bit over $1,300 per student. I think that's going to relieve some pressure on the general fund side, something that has been kind of echoed and mentioned by the state assembly. I also think related to the discretionary block grant as well, something that we saw in the Senate's budget framework was related to allowing kind of more flexibility of these one-time dollars and giving some local discretion. So I think we're going to see some points of alignment in terms of some of these proposals. But when it comes to this withholding proposal, I think that we're going to see some pushback and we'll be with their with the legislature, if they maintain their position on their budget framework, continue to oppose that.
I mean, on that note, Cordell, Stan Rose asking the question, do we have any idea where the legislature is concerning fully funding Prop 98? Is there any chance to negotiate more toward fully funding Prop 98? I'm not going to ask you to take out your crystal ball here, but what are the possibilities around the legislature saying we need to do more than this $3.9 billion?
It's, budget time is always a three-party agreement. It's going to be, I think, in terms of pushing more, I think the governor is going to refer to his larger super COLA. But I think they're also, as Yvonne mentioned too, we're looking at paid family leave, right? Where does that negotiate for a lot of you guys as well, for our members? And so I think the legislature is going to make sure that these investments that we're seeing and these influx we're seeing in dollars and the growth of Proposition 98, how can we best utilize those dollars to make sure there's a lot of flexibility in how you guys use those funds?
Avon, maybe you could take this question and Cordell, by all means, chime in. And I think it's a good one for folks trying to understand like this kind of puzzle, if you will, or domino effect. I think it was Matt Tinsley asks, what's the purpose of maintaining with the holding that they're still not giving us all those dollars, but yet that they're adding spending in the block grant and the special ed? Like, what's the correlation there for folks that might not understand? How does this all make sense?
Unfortunately, there's just no kind of rhyme or rhythm as to why the governor's office is choosing to withhold these dollars. I mean, what has been shared with us is that it's to address uncertainty. But something that we've kind of heard in the past is why not, just like they did with the $1.6 billion lower down, why not use the Proposition 98 to address some of this uncertainty? I'll kind of stop there and I'll let Yvonne kind of chime in as well.
Yeah, no, it puzzles us as well. And we were in a briefing earlier today with the governor's staff and press them on this. Just how do you continue to defend and rationalize the withholding, especially given the growth and that we're seeing in state revenue? And they just said that there continues to be related to them wanting to be particularly cautious in how they're budgeting. And they're telling us, don't worry, if revenues materialize the way estimates are forecasted, then you'll get this money at a future time. But again, there's the Prop 98 was very clear in terms of how this money was supposed to be allocated. Mm-hmm. This is a new precedent. It's clear that they're doing this move, whether they say it or not, to balance pressures on the general fund side of the budget. So our position continues to be the same in terms of don't balance the general fund side of the budget on the backs of students. This money needs to go out directly to students to support classrooms. Even though it's down to 3.9, it's still about $650 if that were to be divided and sent out on a per ADA. It equates to about $650 per student. That's real money. Significant dollars that could be used to support students now. There's certainly need for it.
On that note, Jeff Oakes at the very top of the show, and I want to make sure we get to his question. In fact, 17 minutes before the show started, came in with this question. Can anyone confirm that the necessary small school 20% increase is still included in the May revise? Wasn't listed, but it was in the original proposal. Any information on that?
I can check on that for you. Yeah, I can check on that for you. Sometimes when the May revision document comes out, it doesn't necessarily include everything from January, but it doesn't mean that it's been excluded or eliminated. The TBL also dropped today, so we'll be taking a look through that and can confirm if that's still remaining in there.
Again, any more questions you have? We've got 180 of you watching right now, so put that in the chat. Go ahead, Yvonne.
No, I was just gonna say, typically when there's something that was proposed in January and then it's omitted from the May revision details, that means it's maintained. So Jeff, I think you can fully expect that it is maintained. That's certainly our expectation, but we'll confirm that and communicate that out.
So we think it's good news, but we'll make sure. Yvonne, let me touch on you. I know there's a conversation a number of us were having here at first glance about the paid leave, right? And I think that's one. Well, I as our folks and supervisor employers, obviously, wanting to take care and giving the flexibility to our employees, that's always been a sentiment. Also understanding, some of the challenges and then the cost there. So I know that a couple comments came up. This has been a bill that we've talked about, as you mentioned before, and it's been part of the legislature. This interaction with the super COLA and then them funding the leave. So I know, again, just to reiterate, after further review, yes, that they're making that connection, but what is based on the numbers that they're telling us on how much it would cost as opposed to how much we see coming in here with this extra COLA? Yeah,
so the figure that the governor's office just relayed to us just a short bit ago was about $220 million in terms of what the additional costs would be associated with the paid leave. And again, the additional amount that the COLA is increased by is close to about $1.5 billion. And so you can do that math there. It's about maybe 1.3 billion or so above the cost of that they are providing in terms of the estimates for to cover this paid leave. I think it's important to note, regardless of what's estimated, we don't know just what the usage is going to be, and it's going to vary district to district. And so just how this plays out for each individual district, it will be different, right? I mean, it's almost impossible to be able to estimate. They estimated a 2% usage rate just statewide, just to give some reference point. But again, that's going to vary district to district.
And while we're talking Super COLA, I see Heather and Cordell, maybe you could just confirm this, that they want to make sure Super COLA, if it comes to fruition, the whole amount would be ongoing. That's Heather's question.
It'd be ongoing.
And just to clarify on that Super COLA and the paid pregnancy leave, and you asked this question to the finance team earlier today, Yvonne, just applies to the woman who's pregnant, does not apply to the spouse, and that would be separate under FMLA, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, fantastic. We're rolling through. We got a time for a couple more questions before we have to close this one out. And I will just ask you, Yvonne, as we kind of try to put a bow on this, understanding that there is much more to come and much more to break down, and we'll have a little bit for you in just a second on what's coming next week. How can we work together over the next few months as we work to finalize the budget agreement? How can ACSA members engage in the process? What's your advice over these next 4 to 6 weeks?
I think continued statewide focus on fully funding Prop 98 is critical. It is clear that our members' advocacy with the legislature has had impact. Cordell referenced the legislative proposals that came out of each house, and both are on record saying that they believe schools need to be fully funded, that Prop 98 needs to be fully allocated out to the field. And so we can't take that for granted, though. We need to make sure that it's a priority. We need to make sure that they push back and hold the line with the governor. So continued focus there. We know that there is legislative critique to the fully discretionary nature of the discretionary block grant. So making sure that lawmakers hear from the field about why it's important that those dollars be fully discretionary, just how these dollars will go in terms of be spent to support your students. We need to make sure that the legislature recognizes this is a very large, diverse state, and needs are going to look differently, school community to school community. Special education, again, we talked about just how significant of an investment that is, and that provides real relief to schools up and down the state, every single LEA, and defending those dollars and making sure that the legislature sees this as a good investment is going to be really important as well. So those are the three areas I think that advocacy focus should center around.
Quick question from Jim before we let you go. What's the estimated dollar amount per ADA for the $5 billion discretionary block grant? Any info on that?
Yeah, just back of the napkin, just kind of rough estimate. It's about $900 per ADA.
There you go, Jim. As I said at the beginning, this is why they're two of the best in the business at what they do. Yvonne Carrillo, Cordell Hampton. Gentlemen, appreciate the time. Get out of this office, go turn on a fan, or just dump water on yourselves.
I know you can see her.
At least take off your coat. You're making me hot. Yeah.
or go to Edgar's house for all we know. Over there. Gentlemen, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
As we wrap up this ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we want to tell you a couple of things, including the Summer Leadership Institute coming your way June 22nd through the 26th at the University of Laverne. Always a great time. So many opportunities to further your own education, and you can register today. That QR code up on your screen. Edgar, before we go, I guess I just wonder your final thoughts from what we've seen. Another budget day in the books, and a lot to celebrate, but also a lot to work on.
I'm piggybacking on what Yvonne said, and I think, as always, gratitude to our members. I mean, some of the issues we've been talking about today, keeping the discretionary dollars flexible, pushing back on the withholding with the block grant. As Cordell said, we've had some media efforts with some of our partners, whatnot. It's making a difference. I mean, there's a reason why the legislature, which is most directly accountable, right, in terms of their voters, they're coming out and saying that, yeah, we want a different proposal, and we saw at least some improvement. And and that improvement, not always just political pressure, like Yvonne said, they had more revenues to work with. I think there's still some questions there, so I think this is a good first step. But I think we could even make some more meaningful changes to this proposal if we just have that continued advocacy over the next few weeks.
Edgar Zosweda, appreciate the time. I tell you to go cool off, but
you're gonna yeah.
I'm the
Get out
one
of there.
that's turning off studio lights and
Get out of there.
Taking this makeup off my face. Appreciate the time. Naj will be back in the chair next week in an exciting episode. Always a good time when John Gray joins the show. He will be our guest next week on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break for a deep dive. Oh, the lights are going out over here too. It's clearly time to get off the air. Plus, a conversation with Assembly member and State Superintendent of Public Instruction candidate Almerit Suchi. So double duty. Edgar and Naj back next week. Thanks so much for being with us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Remember, Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. Subscribe today, and we'll see you next time.